Entering the atmosphere in T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, returning after a week off, joined of course by Dak, by Doom. What's going on, gentlemen? Thank you so much for holding down the fort for me last week while I was on the injured reserve list. How you doing, Dak? What's going on?
Oh, I'm just doing quite dandy. Been nice and busy lately. New job, new apartment, so pretty exhausted, but yeah, it was fun to do a little bit of zero mission talk last week, which was cool. And now I'm looking forward to talking about a little bit more Metroid Prime 4 as we get into the end of July already, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good, and I'm glad you're feeling better.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate you guys holding it down. Doom, what's going on? That's a fine looking Metroid shirt that you've got on, and you know what, your displays, for anybody that's watching us over on YouTube, which everybody should, but your displays behind you coming together quite nicely there, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, you might notice that one in the back there. It's not quite complete yet. I have some of the parts came in damaged, so I'm still waiting for the replacement parts to appear so that I can fully complete that third one back there. But yeah, I really like how the display's coming together. Love wearing the Metroid drip today. But yeah, otherwise, in terms of my gaming, been playing some more Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Still a spectacular game. It just keeps getting better and better, and like I said last week, this might just be an early game of the year contender for me. And also been doing a lot of Smash Ultimate modding. Really been getting into the modding scene of that game, and I got a lot of work to do, but it's really fun just honing and fully customizing that game to make it to what more of my own personal Ultimate game, if you will.
Nice. So is this like officially opened up the floodgates for you in terms of like you're an RPG fan now? Like, are you ready for some recommendations once you're finished Paper Mario, or like what's the story?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be playing more Paper Marios. Definitely going to be playing the Mario and Luigi games too, especially because Brothership looks so awesome. We talked about that when the Direct dropped, but yeah, very excited for those. And then I also want to explore other turn-based RPGs outside of the Mario universe as well. I mean, Chrono Trigger's a huge one. Obviously, Final Fantasy. There's probably Persona. That's another big one. The recent Yakuza games kind of turned into turn-based RPGs, and there's probably a gajillion others that I'm not even remembering right now. But yeah, it's like this whole other genre that I'm not familiar with, and now I have so much to explore. I have like 3 decades of material just right in front of me that I have absolutely no context behind.
What a time to be alive, man. You're discovering RPGs, and yeah, you definitely got a ton to catch up on. Chrono Trigger is certainly a must, but I've got an entire library ready for you whenever you're ready, so let me know. So we're going to talk about a few things. Excuse me, everybody. I'm still kind of a little bit on the mend here, so if I sound disgusting, sorry. But we're going to talk about a few things here this week. We've been very, very high, obviously, on the reveal of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and we're gonna look at it from a more critical point of view, because while I think it's fair to say that a lot of our critiques have definitely been massaged by seeing the game, there are still some things that maybe are worth bringing up and worth discussing, and maybe the goal of it is to like talk about it and talk ourselves out of being concerned about that. But so we're gonna do that. But the first thing that I wanted to do, because I got a lot of people messaging me last week, because I gave these guys my Metroid Zero Mission definitive ranking here, and a lot of people took umbrage with one score in particular that I gave out. No surprise there. I gave a low score for the music, so I thought I would very quickly go through and just clarify and maybe offer an explanation as to some of my scores that I gave out. So if you guys will indulge me here, really quickly, I gave the world a 4. I think that's a fair score. Great world, colorful, lots of stuff to do, fun. I gave the art style a 5. Dak, we've talked about it since basically we started the podcast. I love that art style, the thick black lines, a comic book looking style. Looks fantastic. Story's a 3. I mean, story is what it is. It's it's fine. It gets the job done. I thought that the pacing was a 5, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Like, it's a lightning quick game. You get to exactly where you need to go. Gameplay's a 5 too. I gave a couple low scores next though. I gave the items a 2, and I wanted to explain that a little bit. The reason that I gave the items a 2 is unfortunately because due to this being the very first, or a reimagining of the very first game in the series, a lot of these basic items that you get in the game are like major upgrades. So for example, like the morph ball bombs, the long beam, the high jump, like the ledge grab. They're kind of items. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like I don't know that Zero Mission really introduced a ton of unique items to the series. It definitely introduced some great ways to use those items, but like I don't think there's anything truly new to the series that the game introduced aside from the Zero Suit, of course, right?
The power grip is kind of new. Ledge grabbing was technically introduced in Fusion, but like the power grip also allowed you to like, shoot off ledges. I think that's really the closest thing you have to like a quote unquote new item in that game.
I think it was more so in reintroducing stuff that was in Super into the Metroid world that it wasn't originally in.
Right. And so that's why I gave this one a little bit of a lower score. Just because it didn't have anything that it introduced uniquely other than the power grip, which kind of feels like something you should just be able to do. But like I tried to make up for that in terms of gameplay and in terms of expansions, which I gave a 5 because I mean, rock on. Those Shrine Spark puzzles are incredible. Areas and bosses, I gave both 4s, but here's the thing that I had like 4 separate people message me about my score for the music because I gave the music a 1. And I stand by that, actually. First and foremost, it's on the Game Boy Advance. That sound process.
No, that's just like, all right, can we
Hold
stop
on.
with this? Like, no, because we can't be ranking the OST anymore entirely based on the hardware it was on, because we can go and listen to it, not on the hardware. And even if you want to be like, okay, I'm only going to rank it based on how I experience it in the game, I'm sorry, but it sounds more than fine on the Game Boy Advance, and if you don't think so, then you need to get your ears checked because it sounds great. Boom.
Yeah, I want to say I'm the audio engineer, so I'm the one that actually has the ear training to be able to hear like all these weird discrepancies and graininess in music that your average person can't tell. I can hear all that stuff in the Game Boy Advance soundtrack, and I don't care. Just throwing that out there.
So if you pack a hyenas are done, what I was saying was it's on the Game Boy Advance, which gives a certain limitation to the soundtrack. But that's not the reason that I'm giving the soundtrack a 1, because there are tons of good Game Boy Advance games that have really awesome music on them, like all the Castlevanias or Minish Cap or whatever have you. The reason that I gave the soundtrack a 1 is because I just don't really particularly love any of the remixes that this game introduced. For example, I look at the music from Nestroid and I look at the music from Zero Mission, and I think almost to a song, I think that the Nestroid soundtrack is better. Like the Ridley theme that plays in the Ridley area, I love that version in Nestroid, and I don't particularly care for it in Zero Mission. The same thing with Kraid's theme. It's an iconic theme in the Nestroid and in the Smash Bros version, but this one has like this weird, I don't know, dude, what is it? It's like some kind of weird instrument that it's got going on. I'm not a fan of it. I don't love the triumphant Brinstar music that plays at the end. I think it's too kind of bombastic and out of place. I've never liked the NES or the Zero Mission Norfair theme. And the Brinstar theme, I think, is just fine. Now, I think that the title theme is great, but that's one good theme among an entire game's worth. So that, my friends, is why I'm dunking on it. That's why I'm giving it a 1. I said what I said. That's how I feel. That's my score.
I think a 1 is egregious.
Imagine not liking the Norfair theme. What on earth am I hearing right now?
Well, we're not talking the Super Metroid Norfair theme. The Zero Mission NES Norfair theme, I don't know. I don't care for it. I don't know.
But isn't that? Aren't we ranking? I mean, I guess part of this definitive ranking stuff is subjective, but like, I feel like there's a difference between saying the OST is objectively bad and is a 1, and you don't like it, because I don't think there's no world in which the Zero Mission OST is a 1, I would say at least you could be like, okay, it's a 2 because I don't like it, but it still has some merit to it. But you're just giving it a 1 because you don't like it.
Well, yeah, that's what definitive ranking is. It's how we personally would rank it, right?
I think
as a soundtrack, it's fine. I mean, it's fine.
I don't know, because like I could be like, oh, I really like the like. I don't know. There's something about a game I could like, but it's still objectively bad. And I don't think Zero Mission's OST is objectively bad. I don't know.
I don't think it's objectively bad, but I'm not here to say that. I mean, who am I? I'm some bloke, and I don't have an
Andy,
informed
you're the
opinion.
Host of the Omega Metroid podcast. Your opinion
well
sways the audiences out there. You can't just be coming out here and saying that it's a 1.
Well, it's certainly not swaying you guys, and it didn't sway anybody that messaged me. So, yeah, you know, like you're not wrong. Like it's a fine soundtrack. Like it doesn't sound bad. It's not actively grating. It's just not a soundtrack that I particularly enjoy or would put up against like other Metroid games and say like, wow, Zero Mission has a way better soundtrack than this game or that game. No, I think Dreads is better.
Crazy,
I think Samus Returns is probably better.
I mean, look, I get it. Like, we have different definitions of a 1. I personally couldn't give like 1 to me is reserved for like horrible, like unlistenable. Whereas like a 2 would be like, okay, maybe, but that's just me. I don't know. I guess Andy, you needed to defend yourself because I don't know how
I did.
Anyone could put their name to such a take. A 1 is.
I'll just say again what I said last week, Andy. I don't ever want to hear you give me crap about my Phendrana Drifts take ever again, because this is infinitely worse than that. Especially because I still give Phendrana Drifts a 5 out of 5 at the end of the day. It's a terrific track.
Dak, what do you think is a worse take? Metroid Zero Mission soundtrack being a 1 or Phendrana Drifts not being in the top 50 Metroid songs? Be honest.
I think the Zero Mission take is worse because
God.
because I think there are a lot of good. I mean, look, the Phendrana Drifts take is also very bad. Like also a very bad take. But there are a lot of good Metroid songs. I'm like, okay, maybe you could make the case that Phendrana Drifts somehow doesn't end up in the top 50 because there's so much good Metroid music. But to say that the Zero Mission OST is a 1, I'm sorry, Andy, but the ear doctor is calling, and you might not be able to hear it because you need your ears checked, but it is calling, and you need to pick up.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you this. I was expecting to get a little bit more flack even than you guys brought here today. So as far as, you know, defending myself and the take, it could have been worse. It could have been worse.
This stuff isn't surprising, Andy. This is what, episode 226, and this is not your first contrarian take.
Not my last either.
And not your last. So no, this is not, I mean, it's not a hill I'm going to die on, but I just think it's very, I use the word egregious, and I think that's the most fitting word.
You know, just because we're talking about, I guess, spicy Metroid takes here, I was talking to one of our regulars in Discord earlier today, our pal Minneapolis King, and he was kind of saying like, that Raven Beak daughter father thing in Metroid Dread is no good. And you know what? I stuck up for that too. I was like, you know what? Actually, I think it was fine. And I know, I actually specifically said, I know that these two guys hate it, but I think in context, it's actually fine. So I'm on a roll today. I'm going to see how many people I can anger by the time this podcast is over.
I'm down to pivot to more spicy takes this episode if anyone has any other ones. I would like to, if you want to talk about that Raven Beak thing more, I'm totally down.
Honestly, I'm down to just have a whole episode dedicated to like our just most worst Metroid spicy takes that we can ever imagine.
I think we did that
have
once.
We done that?
I want to say we did that once, or we asked people for their spiciest takes, I think is what it was.
Something like that, yeah.
It, but
the Raven Beak thing, real quick. What was? Can you give us a quick summary of what that was?
So Ryan or Minneapolis King was saying like, you know, I thought it was cheesy as hell when Ravenbeak called Samus his daughter, and you know, big spoilers here. So Ravenbeak used his own Chozo DNA to enhance Samus's DNA as well. So here's a quick recap of the whole thing from the end of Metroid Dread. So it's revealed that Samus has Thoha DNA as well as Makin DNA, which are two different types of Chozo. And we don't know, or maybe they said, but I forgot where she got the Thoha DNA from, but she got the Makin DNA from Ravenbeak. So Ravenbeak is taunting Samus and kind of says, like, in a taunting way, like, you know, I'm your father because you have my DNA. Not in a Darth Vader kind of way, nothing like that silliness. Like, it was obviously intended to be a taunt. And you know what, Ryan was just like, I thought it was lame, and you know what, that's fine. But I think in context, it's actually not too terrible.
Yeah, so I'm kind of indifferent on it. I would have personally rather they just not done that just because of the obvious allusions to the Darth Vader, even though it's obviously completely different. But my whole problem with the DNA plotline is more just the DNA plotline in the beginning. The fact that, like, oh, the Metroids have a random instinct to not go after Toha, but only that whole thing is what I don't like, because that's just dumb. But the whole father thing, I'm kind of indifferent, leaning towards rather than not do it, but also don't really care at the end of the day.
I mean, on my end, it was because I was someone who immediately didn't like it. It was very easy for me to be like, "Oh, he was being literal. Huh? He actually says, you know, Samus is his daughter, and that's stupid." But obviously, that's not the intent. But that said, I'm still on the side of it is still kind of lame, just because it's such an overused trope in sci-fi, I think, in general. And like, how can you not think of Darth Vader when the guy shows up as like Darth Bird Vader essentially in the game? So like, it's hard not to see that visual illusion there. I think too, maybe not for, I mean, obviously even there, Andy, when you were just trying to explain what it is the scenario is, it's so clunky and convoluted. I liked when it was just Samus was orphaned, the Chozo took her in, and at some point they put Chozo DNA into her because that would help her become stronger or be able to survive and all of that. And that was enough, you know? And once you start to add in, like, you know, this DNA was from this particular tribe and this individual and that individual for this reason and that reason, and that's when it starts to get very messy. I think at the certain level of Ravenbeak actually being Samus's father, it's certainly on the lower list of like things that really matter. It just, I think it was all of everything put together at once. And then, you know, Ravenbeak is growing Sephiroth wings and all that, and it's very heightened, so it's a little melodramatic already. So I think that kind of leads to that interpretation as well, but it wasn't my favorite either. So you know.
And I don't think it's most people's favorite, and like, I get it. Yeah, and you certainly invite yourself to that comparison, you know, when you make a decision like that in game. But I don't think it was like horrible by any means. So yeah, that's what I was defending earlier today. And I'll tell you what, like, I mean, let's keep it going here, because originally what the whole idea here is that, you know, for months and months and months leading up to what we now know was the eventual reveal of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, we were talking about things that Nintendo should do when they reveal the game, and things that Nintendo should not do when they reveal the game. And it's funny, actually, because they almost did everything I didn't want them to do, but it was just so nice to see the game that it was just kind of like, who cares? I'm so happy to see it that it feels like it doesn't matter anymore. But like, I think that it's worth talking about some of the points that we originally had and some of the things that, you know, you originally struggled with doing when you saw that trailer, because I think you were probably the coolest of the three of us on the trailer in terms of what you saw. So I don't know if these are going to be, I don't think that they're hot takes. I think they're just valid or observations or stray observations or whatever. But I did want to take a more critical look at maybe some of the things that Nintendo could have done a little bit differently in order to, I don't know, make the Metroid Prime 4 reveal seem even bigger than it already did. And I guess we should start off by giving credit where credit is due. This main evented a Nintendo Direct, and, you know, a lot of people saw it, and a lot of people were talking about Metroid Prime that aren't even Metroid fans. I had a ton of my Zelda pals just being like, oh my god, like, this looks awesome. So I do think that looks great, and I think that the trailer that we saw itself was really, it was a solid trailer, and I think it was what it needed to be. There are some things that I would have changed about it though. So, and I think that there's probably things that all three of us could go to. So I wanted to talk about those and do a little roundtable here. I can go first if you want, but does anybody want to volunteer and take any of their? I'm looking at you actually, Doom. Anybody want to go first?
Sure, I can go first. Because most of what I have to say at this point, it's really not so much critiques as it is very, very like minor nitpicks, and even beyond that, more so just questions that I would have liked answered in this trailer that we didn't get. But that's not necessarily a concern I have, because it's something that I'm sure, we'll get details on later. Obviously, we're going to see a lot more of this game before it comes out. And so that's just kind of where I'm at right now, because the most of the legitimate, like, quote unquote disappointing things that I thought when I initially watched the trailer, as you just described, no longer disappointing to me. It's just something that I had to kind of get used to, kind of get used to, because a lot of this game was different than what I was expecting, but different doesn't mean bad. In fact, different could actually mean pretty cool if you open yourself up to it. And so I guess maybe that's what I'll start with, because one of the things that I used to describe the trailer when I first saw it, and I definitely do not agree with it today, is that I thought it looked cartoony. And the reason I used that word specifically was because of all the design influences that I saw throughout the trailer. One particular artistic element that I saw was from Metroid Other M of all games, which is an art direction that I'm not the fondest of, particularly with the Samus's arm cannon. It shares that same teal. It has some of the green lights from it. It has some of the more rounded curvature edges. And so on its face, Other M's arm cannon is my least favorite in this series. So when I first saw those little subtle design influences, I was immediately turned off by it. But I sat with it, gave it some time, and I was like, you know what? This isn't the Other M arm cannon. It took a couple of cues with it from that game, but it reinterpreted that into the Metroid Prime art style in a way to where it actually looks pretty cool, in my opinion. And so that's kind of an example of something that something that I had to sit with and just kind of process. Does that kind of make sense? Because that's kind of how I felt throughout the whole trailer.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and we touched on it a couple weeks ago, and I think that this is still true. Like, sometimes when you are wanting, and something's coming for so long, and you finally see it, you have an idea of what it's going to be in your head, and it does take a little bit of an adjustment period to, wrap your head around what it is instead of what you want it to be. And I've... what's a weird example of that for me, actually? Do you guys remember the show Gotham? Like the Batman show? It was like...
CW show?
I think it was CW. It had the guy from the OC playing Jim Gordon. When it was first announced, my point to bring this up is like when it was first announced, I pictured this like live action noir kind of style that was an evolution of like the animated series, but in stylistic 1940s style action or whatever. It was a very campy, goofy kind of a show, and like once I started accepting it for what it was, I was like, okay, like this is fine actually. But it was that kind of same kind of process there, and I guess like accepting it for as it came. I'll give you an example of something that I think is, I don't know if I'd say it's a mistake, but I think about it when talking about the Metroid Prime 4 reveal. I still wonder if Nintendo would have been better served to announce the Switch 2 first, and then definitively say, like, Metroid Prime 4 is coming out for the Switch 2, and it's also coming out for the Nintendo Switch. Because what they did was leave it ambiguous, and also, like, but by leaving it ambiguous, I think that you just have planted the seed in everybody's mind, like, this is just a Switch game and maybe it'll get ported over to the Switch 2. And that's probably exactly what it is. It's probably just a Switch game that is going to be run on Switch 2. But I do think that there's a way to kind of make like a first impression like that and say, like, this new game is pushing boundaries. It's going to be on the Switch 2. It's going to be one of our big titles at launch, coming out in the first 6 months or whatever. This is your first look at it. And I guess I sometimes wonder if, like, Nintendo should have just held off until the Switch 2 reveal, and then, because I'm assuming they're going to have some kind of direct that shows all the games coming out in the first 6 to 9 months on the Switch 2. I wonder if Metroid Prime 4 would have made more of an impression in that showcase, or if it's better just to announce it the way that they did instead of it getting maybe lost in the shuffle with like a new Mario Kart or a new Animal Crossing or like whatever, right? Like, part of me still does think that they should have just, I mean, we waited so long. What's another couple months? And I think that there's some validity in that, but I am a little bit more unsure about it now that we're actually here. I don't know what you guys think of that.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like why would they? It's clearly not a Switch 2 game, so I don't see why they would hold it to show it off with the Switch 2. So that's how I see it. It's very clearly being developed and was developed for the Switch. It's not a Switch 2 game, even if it does get ported. So yeah, there's really no point in holding off. Like, the game's ready, and I don't think people are going to be like. I don't think a majority of people saw this game and like, oh, they should have waited, put it on the Switch 2. Like, that's not even announced yet. I think people aren't biding their time necessarily in that kind of way. Maybe some people are, and certainly maybe I was even one of those people. But now that I've just seen it, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad game's coming out. I want to play it. Let's do it. So I'm personally not holding that against the game, and I think obviously now it's clearly not being developed primarily for the Switch 2, so I don't think it makes sense to hold on to it any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of indifferent on the whole thing. Like, on one hand, I could definitely see, a situation where they do save that for the Switch 2, but at the same time, I also don't see an issue with, showing it off a bit early, especially because, I mean, one of the biggest conversations that people were having, after the trailer was, oh my God, was this secretly Switch 2 footage? It's not. It's totally on Switch 1. A Digital Foundry and a few other like technical analysis have broken down why it's clearly running on Switch 1. But I think it's a testament to how incredibly talented the staff at Retro Studios is, that people are even having these conversations in the first place. And so I think with a game that does look this visually incredible, I think you can get away with showing it off early on the quote-unquote inferior hardware first. I mean, before and that's assuming that there is a Switch 2 version, which obviously we don't even know yet.
I was gonna say, y'all keep saying early, but like, what early from what? Like, it's a Switch 1 game, like, it's not. We have no idea if there's a Switch 2 version or if it's getting ported or anything like that. I mean, it's a safe assumption, but I don't know. I just feel like this whole early talk, like, it's clearly not early. It's, if anything, it was delayed. If anything, it's like, it's such a, because the Switch 2 being a success or whatever is not guaranteed. Everybody has a Switch 1, right? So in my mind, I'm like, ooh, well, if anything, like, this is the best opportunity for Metroid Prime 4, because if you put it on the Switch 2 and not everybody gets that, now it's on that system, not all these people that have a Switch have. So this, like you just brought that up, Doom, how great the game looks on the Switch, what Retro was able to do. This is a great asset for a system that has now been out 7, 8, however many years. Mm-hmm. And that's like the juice you can squeeze out of the system. It's still a really strong marketing asset and a really strong just asset for the system's library, because who knows when the Switch 2 is going to drop. I mean, this game drops early 2025, right? The Switch 2 could still be out holiday 2025, and this could be the game holding people over till then, right? So I don't know if I would agree that there's necessarily an aspect of earliness to it. I think it seems at this point right on time for me.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I see what you guys are saying, and I'm not necessarily gonna endorse everything that I'm saying, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I think that you could say,
Andy.
Well, don't worry, I'm about to drop even more spice on this show. But so everything that you just said, Dak, I think if you took that exact wording and applied it to Samus Returns in 2017, that could make a lot of sense, because there was no guarantee that the Switch was going to be a success. There was like 80 million 3DSs out in the world. Samus Returns pushed the 3DS to its limits in terms of, I mean, it looks great still. And I think in hindsight, that was clearly a mistake. Now, maybe the mistake was leaving it on the 3DS and not porting it over. I'm assuming it would be easier to port a game from Switch 1 to Switch 2 than it would be from 3DS to Switch. But I think that you could still make that argument there and just see the parallels and just be like, I don't want this to happen to Metroid Prime 4. And you know what I would definitively say is that I do think it would be a real bad mistake to have this game not be cross-gen and be only on Nintendo Switch 1. I think that would be not great because historically you've seen, and by the way, Nintendo announced that the Switch 2 was a thing before this Nintendo Direct where they showed Metroid Prime 4. So people know about it, right? Like maybe not.
Yeah, they confirmed it, but they didn't really announce it.
Well, no, they didn't announce it, but like they confirmed what everybody already knew, that there's a new console in development. But so like you're like, I guess more hardcore fans know about it, and probably the casual fans probably assume it's coming out soon anyways. So the point is, I guess, is like for me, like I see those parallels to Samus Returns, and that worries me a little bit. And I guess historically too, I would say typically, and you saw this with the Wii to the Wii U, like after like a X amount of years, like people just put their Wiis away and nobody was playing that anymore. You saw games that would usually sell pretty well didn't do very well, like Skyward Sword. You know, once the Switch was out, people,
that game was bad.
No, it wasn't. It got critical review. Like it got like amazing reviews when it came out. But anyways, so people don't. I don't think a lot of people played their 3DS after the Switch was out. I mean, I think every game pretty much bombed sales wise after, and it wasn't like there weren't big releases for the 3DS.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too, though, is this is like we're going from home console to home console. We're not going from a portable system to a home console in terms of the next console release for Nintendo. So like Samus Returns was always a portable game. It was not going to be easily like held back and delayed so it could be put on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Metroid Prime 4 is being developed for a console. It could theoretically be a lot easier to be held to another console. So in that way, like, okay, yeah, the 3DS being left on, or the Samus Returns being left on the 3DS kind of sucks. There's nowhere else you can really go with that. But I don't know. I mean, the Metroid Prime 4 isn't necessarily stuck on the Switch. The Switch is doing better than the 3DS was at this part of its lifespan. So I don't know. I'm not getting the same vibes of the game is being sent out to die. If anything, I'm getting more vibes of this is the big kind of last big grandiose, one of the last hurrahs for the system. And I don't know, that's a pretty good position. I mean, I could be entirely coping right here, but to me it seems like because there is the assumption that Metroid Prime 4 will eventually be cross-gen or whatever, that there isn't going to be stuck on the Switch. So why not put it out now?
Yeah, so I think there's some parallels there, but ultimately they're a bit different. I think one of the biggest differences between the 3DS to the Switch versus the Switch to Switch 2 is backwards compatibility, which obviously we don't know if the Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible or not, but I think at this point it's a pretty safe, educated guess that your Switch 1 library is going to be fully compatible on the Switch 2. Historically, that's what Nintendo does. I would imagine that it's going to use a very similar cartridge form factor, and so it would, even for Nintendo, who's very weird and out there and can throw you a curveball, I would genuinely be stunned if the Switch 2 was not backwards compatible.
That would just be the biggest L you've ever seen from Nintendo.
So there's that. That being said, though, I do agree. I would be a little disappointed if there wasn't a Switch 2 version of this game, just because even though there isn't really a precedent with this for Nintendo yet, the Metroid Prime series has historically been a technical showcase for Nintendo hardware, especially new Nintendo hardware with Primes 1 and 3 specifically. Prime 1 was like, hey, here's a game that looks like it came from the future. And then Prime 3, the Wii was, very much this underpowered console. And Prime 3 was sent out to go, hey, listen, we're not an HD console, but that doesn't mean that, we can't do some incredible stuff on it. Look at these charge beam particle effects. And so I would imagine that Prime 4 is going to be put in a similar position. And I feel like if you're going to do that, even if it's not taking full advantage of the Switch 2, like just being able to take a little bit more advantage of it and just polish up some of those areas of what this already really well-performing Switch 1 version is going to do, I think that would be a really good idea for the Switch 2 showcase.
I don't want to harp on this too much, but I do think that Metroid Prime 4 is mostly being developed just as another good Metroid Prime game and not necessarily to like be a kind of killer app showing off of like a certain feature of the system. Because I mean, Doom, you bring up like how the game has been, kind of a technical showpiece, but from my perspective, I always looked at Metroid as it's also much like Mario Kart or like a Smash Bros. It shows off the features of the system. So Metroid Prime 3, it did all the waggle and motion stuff. Metroid Prime Hunters was one of the first online compatible Nintendo games. So stuff like that. Obviously, Samus Returns, I mean, it wasn't one of the first 3D games, but it was the first 3D Metroid, I guess, in terms of like...
Well, I'm specifically talking about the Prime games, not even necessarily the mainline entries.
Right. 3 and Hunters is more towards my point.
Mm-hmm.
But so in my eyes, I'm almost like, I don't know if Metroid Prime 4 is going to have that same like role for Nintendo. I think they're just trying to put out a good Metroid Prime. You know, I don't think they're necessarily like, oh, it's going to show off this cool thing of the Switch 2, or we're going to put it out so that way you can push the Switch 2 to the max, or the Switch. I think just trying to put out a good Metroid Prime game, and all that kind of stuff is ancillary. So I don't know. I don't want to harp on it too much. I feel like what we're talking about is not even related to the trailer itself. So, but that's all I'll say about it right now.
Well, and that's like in the trailer itself, like you brought up, like I don't really have much critiques in the way of what we saw. My critiques were, I guess, the timing and the manner in which they released the trailer at all.
Okay, well, I have a critique for the trailer.
Yeah,
I don't have anything more to go on that. Sorry.
I do, but we can save it. We can save it.
Well, what was your last thing to say on it? Just because I want to talk a little bit more about the trailer itself.
Okay, I guess the last thing that I would say, and this is like so far down the hypothetical path that like it's really not. Like, it almost really doesn't bear discussing because, like, what are you going to do about it? But to kind of Doom's point, like, I actually do agree. Like, when the first Metroid Prime came out and the first, when Corruption came out, it seemed like this was just, like, it was a series that Nintendo made that was a really concentrated effort to show off the graphical fidelity of that console that it was on. And to your point, Dak, like some of those other games, yeah, like they included the gimmick of whatever console it was on, but like so did pretty much every other game. Like I think of the DS and like how many games had that miserable touchscreen control. Almost every one of them did. So like to me, like I more so think of Prime as like showing off what a system can do. And I don't know, I guess part of me, like in hindsight, is just like, okay, I wonder why this just wasn't developed exclusively for the Switch 2. And I know that would drive people nuts that have been waiting for Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch, but I do think like if you would have shown Metroid Prime 4 off in a Switch 2 showcase where you're revealing all the games, and it's just this unbelievable looking game, and I'm not saying it doesn't look great, it does. It looks awesome, but I don't know, it's kind of like what could have been. And again, it's so far down the path of hypothetical, but yeah, I don't know. It's something that I think about sometimes, and I don't think it really has any bearing on anything, but I do think about it.
I mean,
I don't really care whether or not it's a Switch 2 exclusive or not. Like even before this trailer, I've been very vocal about that. Because my whole thing is at the end of the day, when Retro did restart this game, they had a project plan in place. And at the end of the day, does their project plan, does their vision for Metroid Prime 4, does it work on the Switch? Clearly it does. And if it works on the Switch, you may as well release it on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I mean, let's be really honest with ourselves. How much better are Switch 2 games going to look than late era Switch games? In my opinion, I'm not expecting them to look that much better. Like you're like, it's going to look unbelievable. I really don't think it's going to look. I mean, I'm sure it's going to look better, but I'm not expecting it to be like, oh my God, we're looking at a PC 4K game. We're looking at an Xbox 720. Like, no, it's.
Can you imagine?
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, why even hold the game that long if the improvement's going to be negligible?
Well, and I feel like that's fair. Like, again, it's so far down the path of hypothetical. We don't know anything about the Switch 2. We don't know like a thing about it. So it's hard
Switch
to.
It could be Switch 1 with 4 Joy-Cons for all we know. Like,
it could be this disc-based system too. That's like completely who knows what the hell that thing's going to be, but. I mean, I think it's reasonable, obviously, to assume that there's going to be some sort of graphical improvement or performance improvement. And I'm not a tech guy, you guys know that, but I don't know. So part of me is just like, would it have been more impactful to show this off, let people know definitively this is new hardware, this is new tech, this is new. Every time Nintendo's ever released a cross-gen game, you always see the new version like lapping the older version in terms of sales. And I guess to be fair, I'm really only thinking of the 2 Zelda games, but like man, did they ever lap that like the original GameCube and Wii U versions like 30 times over almost.
I mean, I think we're Nintendo fans. We know that Nintendo does not prioritize the graphics of the games and how they look like in terms of like min-maxing something. So if they really want to show off like the graphical fidelity of the Switch 2, they can do that with other series. They can bring back F-Zero for that. They could do Zelda. They could do all sorts of stuff. They don't necessarily need Metroid to do that, even though certainly it would be a great option. So yeah, I mean, I'm okay that they are releasing it as they did. Would it be great to get Switch 2 super hyper HD Metroid Prime 4? Yeah, maybe, but that's not the world we live in. That's not the Nintendo making these games. So
And even so, again, we're talking about Retro Studios here. Retro Studios, let's say that they do port Prime 4 to the Switch 2, and it has very minimal enhancements, like maybe there isn't any LOD changes between textures that are close up versus textures that are far away. Maybe it's at like a 1440p or a 4K, no dynamic resolution instead of the 900p that it's currently set at. It's probably going to be. I would imagine it would be minor enhancements, stuff like that. It's still going to look incredible even with those minor enhancements on a Switch.
It looks great, yeah.
And then better do we need?
And then you got Metroid Prime 5 for that big exclusive Switch 2 game to take full advantage of it, and that's the game where you show like, oh no, we're not done yet.
Yeah, you know what? Let's touch back on that here, but let's let Dak. Let's get him a turn.
Let's talk about the trailer, because oh my god, we talked about the trailer finally. Here's a critique I have of the trailer. Not the best version of the Space Pirates Prime theme, is my opinion. That's actually probably my biggest takeaway. Is I'm not a huge fan of the rendition of the Space Pirates theme in this. I went back. Obviously, I know all three of them, but like, especially the original Prime Space Pirates theme, but it's not as good as the first one. It's not as good as the second one. It's not as good as the third one. It's slower than all of them, like pacing wise. Like, I don't know, like it just doesn't feel as like, if you go back and listen to all like the Prime 1, 2, and 3 Space Pirate rendition, like theme and renditions, and then this one, it's noticeably slower. And if you listen to the video or you watch the trailer in 1.25 time, it sounds, I think, better actually. The trailer theme that we got, like that Space Pirates theme, it just like feels like it just suddenly starts abruptly, which I guess makes sense for the theme, but like it just kind of drops into the trailer. Again, I guess that makes sense because it's like timed with this big explosion. But that was my, I think, biggest takeaway was that the Space Pirates theme is kind of like, it's kind of meh-ish. Like, I would have rathered a much better, punchier version that was a little faster, or any of the original Prime Space Pirate themes. That's probably my biggest. It didn't feel like it could have had some more oomph. I feel like the trailer oomph didn't really come, the punch, until the very end when Salak showed up. And that was partly because of the music.
So this is actually a really interesting one for me, because this is actually one of those things where when I first saw the trailer, I didn't like, but after adjusting to it, I actually started to really enjoy what they did with this theme. And it kind of goes into a bigger theming of this with the music for me, where I'll kind of talk about the music in general. But yeah, when I first heard the music, I've been pretty vocal about it on this podcast, but for any of the new listeners who aren't familiar with my Metroid music takes, I think Metroid is at its best when when it's adhering to Hip Tanaka's original philosophy of making the music sound as if it's a living, breathing creature, if not literally as an extension of the environment itself. And I especially love Kenji Yamamoto's interpretation of that throughout the Prime trilogy, of using acousmatic sound to bridge this diegetic and non-diegetic barrier of the in-game universe sounds and this non-diegetic soundtrack together to make it into one. I've always been a huge fan of that. I think that's what makes Metroid so unique in terms of instead of just another generic sci-fi score. No, this is a Metroid score. And I don't necessarily mind neoclassical elements, more contemporary elements. Prime 3 is a soundtrack that I love despite, these obvious inclusions of it. But I feel like, as, Metroid titles have gone on, we've been slowly getting away from those original themes and delving more and more into these neoclassical elements. And especially with Dread, that was kind of like the final tipping point for me, where I was just like, no, this is too far. We have to go back now. We have to go back to these roots and what made it great. And so, tying this all back in again into the Prime 4 score, very, very much leaning a lot more into these neoclassical elements, which at first I was just like, oh no, I'm not a fan of this. However, what I don't necessarily mind about it in this trailer is because, as we've talked about this before, this trailer is very evocative of Prime 3, specifically the opening. And Prime 3's opening is actually one of the sections in the game where I think those, more neoclassical, contemporary, cinematic, if you will, I feel like those elements really work well in that game's favor during these big action-packed set pieces and openings. And so re-listening to it again in this context as kind of this very similar Prime 3 cinematic opening, I actually think a lot of the music here worked pretty well. It does leave a question for me at the end, though. Is that going to be evocative of the entire game's soundtrack, or is this just going to be evocative of these more cinematic, grand scale epic battles? And so that's kind of where I stand. And as for that space pirate theme, I think it works well in this context personally.
All right, well, let me follow up that analysis with my own learned opinion here. I thought that it sounded really cool, and I kind of like that they saved like the big riff just for the end when Silex came in. I think it would have been cool, yeah, to see or to hear like the hard as hell space pirate theme from Metroid Prime, specifically the first Metroid Prime. But I'm okay actually that was saved for. I get or toned down. Let's just say I thought that like that riff that plays when Silex walks in, like I thought that was cool.
Yeah,
And I thought that was
cool.
like the exclamation mark, and I wonder if maybe if you'd have done that hard as hell space pirate theme, if that takes away from that little riff. But I thought that it sounded cool. I didn't have a problem with it.
I think it sounds cool. It just sounds very, kind of understated. It didn't get my blood pumping, and going back and rewatching it doesn't get my blood pumping. I go and listen to the other ones. I'm like, oh yeah, like this is like it. You could feel the ferocity in the theme. And this one it's very kind of subdued, which had to me a little bit of a visual dissonance because I'm watching the action, which is very almost faster paced, even though it's still slower paced, Metroid Prime gameplay. It almost felt faster paced than the music I'm hearing, and I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like, it felt kind of backwards. So, I don't know. It's I like it, and to your point, Doom, earlier, I'm sure this kind of opening is probably going to be more of like just the big bombastic kind of themes that aren't tied to the environment, but like that ending part with the trailer, the portion when we're wherever the planet is that Samus is at the end of the trailer, you get that kind of music that's a little mix of both. You can hear the birds chirping, and you can hear a lot more ambient noise there, which was nice. But yeah, just specifically that theme, not necessarily just the grander context of how the OST is going to be handled. Just that specific theme, I was like, a bit weak. It didn't have that like straight up punchy or like just that high energy that I was hoping could just be carried throughout the whole trailer, and then boom, it kind of exploded at the end. It kind of felt more like subdued, and then slowly rising up, and then again, Silex at the end was really the big thing. But I wish it had a bit more, I don't know, grip to it, and a little more a faster paced element of music throughout the trailer. I would have done it differently, personally.
It's actually interesting because this the new pirate theme, it reminds me of the Federation Force arrangements, which do have a very similar slow tempo as opposed to the much faster tempos that are associated with like the main Prime trilogy. So I thought that was an interesting choice as well. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if it was specifically trying to like reference that or whatnot, but
I mean, I wouldn't be totally upset if they referenced the Federation Force music. Yeah, say what you will about the game, and I guess the game's music, but I don't think the music was bad.
It was just very generic. It could have been in any sci-fi game.
Do you think it's better than Metroid Zero Mission or no?
Absolutely not. No.
Absolutely.
Well, do you have any more critiques from that trailer, Dak? Because I think you did have one, and if you don't bring it up, I think I'm going to.
So the other one I had, I kind of feel slightly different about it, similar to Doom's point on some of his feelings. And I don't want to be super redundant on what I've said before. So I had a critique where I kind of wish that the gameplay showed off, like the trailer showed off a bit more unique gameplay. And I was originally between like, okay, I wish it showed me either like it showed me like a sprint or a melee or something, or if it just showed me something a lot bigger. So like if there's a time travel thing, like if it showed me a time travel mechanic, something like that. Just because my main gripe was that it just felt too familiar gameplay wise. Like obviously the morph ball animation, nice and snappy, a little faster. The UI is different, great. But if you watch like the trailer, just the core gameplay we get, it's very, very familiar. It's like basic Metroid Prime gameplay. It's almost as if they never stopped to make like this is like, it's like Metroid Prime 4 gameplay from 2010 almost, you know? Like
Yeah.
as if they never stopped making Metroid Primes and this is the immediate next game and there's no at all modernization of the gameplay. Now I'm totally okay with that because on one hand, like, I don't need to see that in a trailer. Like, that's not going to get me to buy the game. On the other hand, there are so many other FPS games out there that maybe it's going to be nice for Metroid Prime to not have the things you see in all these other games, and maybe I don't need a slide mechanic or a melee or whatever. Even if it would make sense in other FPS games, and I'm used to it
Yeah.
there, like maybe Metroid Prime doesn't need that. Okay, fine. But I really, really wish that they had one gameplay hook, whether it was like the time travel visor or something, just to differentiate it gameplay wise from previous Metroid Primes. Because it's almost feels almost like regressed a little bit. Because like when Metroid Prime 3 was revealed, for example, like you had like the shield ripping off and the visor, the command visor. Like even if I remember correctly, just without even rewatching it, the Metroid Dread reveal trailer, the very first one, not like the next gameplay trailers. In the very first trailer, at the very least, I'm pretty sure you saw the slide, which was new, and you saw the Emmys, which was a big, even if it wasn't like how you controlled the game, it was a big gameplay hook. That was immediately revealed in the game that made it differentiated from the other 2D games. I might be wrong
the
on
Phantom
the
Cloak
slide.
No,
too.
you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Phantom Cloak. Yeah, so like okay, the Phantom Cloak is maybe Samus Returns-y, so like okay, that's fine. But there was stuff in the original Metroid Dread trailer that was completely unique to the game that differentiated it from the previous games, 2D games, gameplay wise. When you look
Right.
at Prime 4, I didn't get that same feel. I didn't need a melee or a sprint, though that would have been cool. But I would have loved just one hook, just to like, oh, that's new. This is Metroid Prime 4, because I'm like, oh, this could have just been gameplay wise, it could have been Metroid Prime Remastered DLC for all I know, like I wish there was a little bit more modernization, just one kind of hint at a little bit new gameplay mechanic and just a quick snippet of that would have been great.
Yeah, I totally see what you're saying. And I don't. I kind of disagree and I kind of don't disagree. I don't really disagree at all. But I guess in my mind, context here matters a little bit. And I think that when you see the trailer, at least for me, you can't separate everything that happened with the game beforehand, and maybe a lot of people watching it for the first time had no idea about the development restart, but I think enough people did. And so what I think the idea behind that trailer was, and why they didn't show anything new yet, because I'm sure that they will, but I think the idea is like, I think a lot of people maybe have got the impression, and I mean rightfully so, that the development was troubled, and like, is this game even going to be any good? And maybe I think Nintendo really just wanted to silence that by showing you the very basics. Like, yeah, this is going to be an awesome Metroid Prime game. It's going to be like the Metroid Prime that you remember. So I think that was intentional by choice, that they showed off a lot of familiar things like scanning, morph ball transition, that kind of stuff. I think, if anything, they wanted to reassure people, like, this is a back to the basics. It's going to be the Metroid Prime style that you remember. It's going to be that first-person shooter game. And you don't have to worry about the quality of it and the overall aesthetic. Kind of like Doom was saying, I think that they also wanted to show off, like, yeah, this is going to be an awesome looking Metroid game as well. So like, you don't need to worry about that. I do think that more of that stuff that you're talking about is certainly coming. And I do think it probably would have been cool to show something like that in the first trailer, but I guess I understand why they didn't. And I guess I get where it's just like, okay, don't worry, like, we're in safe hands. The very basics are here. Now that we've got that covered, the next trailer, we're going to show you this.
Yeah, definitely. They wanted to do a safe trailer, and Doom, I'll throw it to you real quick. Yeah, no, I definitely got that. I still think they could have achieved that while showing off just like a split second of something. Because number one, they did that with Silex, which if you don't know Metroid, you're like, who is that? And were perfectly fine showing that off. And if anything, I thought it was better that they did, because it left some questions to be answered, and it got veteran fans hyped. So new fans were like, oh, well, I must be hyped too for it. But on the other hand, I think the context of this is going to be some people's first Metroid Prime game. Maybe even they didn't try Metroid Prime Remastered, or maybe they did try Metroid Prime Remastered. And now they're like, okay, what's next? And they see like a game that in 2024 is not modern gameplay wise. So like, even if you didn't know any of the other context of the development, it would have been nice for someone who might be seeing this for the first time, being like, oh, a little bit more of a hook for someone who may be a bit more used to, modern FPS games, right? Like, and again, that could be, that could be a benefit to the game of having something that is maybe a bit more simple and different, but something that could have just stuck out a bit more, that was a bit more of a hook, could have been nice for both returning and new fans. Doom, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm mostly in agreement. There's like slight stuff that I don't necessarily would have gone for. Like, I don't think, if assuming there is like a time travel power up or mechanic that like Samus actively uses, I think it's the smart decision to hold that off for now, especially because we're still speculating on the story. We're pretty confident that time travel is going to be involved in this game, but we don't know for sure yet. And I think it's smart to hold that off until we really do start to get more into those story details. And so I'm fine with that. And then as for the Dread trailer, I think the Dread trailer is just a little bit different because that game did come out later that year. It had a much shorter marketing cycle than this game is. So this game has to spread stuff out a little more. That being said, though, I'm 100% in agreement. I do wish we got just one mechanic. Doesn't even have to be like a major mechanic or anything. Something like, a mantle or a ledge grab or something small like that, where it's like a nice quality of life improvement, but doesn't like turn it into a completely different game. Kind of like the slide in Metroid Dread, which is, an incredibly nice quality of life improvement, offers a lot of utility, but it's not the slide doesn't make it like, oh, this is just Samus Returns with a slide. No, it's Metroid Dread. It's its own unique entry. And so I do wish that Prime 4 did show us a little bit something, because every single mechanic that Samus does in this game is something that she could have done in the other games. Whether it's the basic shooting, the missile launcher, the morph ball, the side dash and whatnot. All of that stuff we've been able to do before. I just wish we saw one brand new movement, not even necessarily a new ability, but just some sort of new action or movement.
I'll tell you what they should have done.
Never been able to do.
They should have ended this trailer with Samus on that planet doing a speed boost or a shine spark or both. That would have been awesome.
That would have been
to see
cool.
that. Yeah,
I would have loved that. Or even a finishing move. Like if they're going to bring those back, like a nice cinematic finishing move, that would have been really cool. Something like that. Just something just a little different. Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun. But,
yeah, I think that's really fair. Like, I guess I'm defending them a little bit. I understand why they did it, but it would have been nice to, I don't know, do a little bit of something. I do agree with Doom though. I don't think you want to go too overboard on like the main gimmick, I guess, of the game or time travel or whatever have you. And I just rewatched that Metroid Dread reveal trailer. I also just think that's like an all-time great reveal trailer as well. So it's like it's hard to stack up against that. And you're certainly right, Doom. Like the fact that it was coming out in like 3 months definitely meant that they could show a little bit more a little bit sooner.
I don't know. I think it's okay. I think showing off the game's like primary systems like selling point is not going overboard, in my opinion. Like I think that's the thing you should kind of show off. And actually, it would have been really cool, in my opinion. Like obviously we're assuming there's some time travel mechanic. Let's say that's what it is. It would have been really cool if there was like a quick shot of Samus doing that real quick, unexplained, because that would have left so many more questions, and it would have given us a lot more to chew on gameplay wise as well as story wise. So I mean, I still love that this trailer left a lot of questions. There was just a couple of things that I wish maybe could have left us a bit more questions. So I don't know.
I'm hoping that I can have my cake and eat it too, so I can enjoy the reveal of Metroid Prime 4, but maybe the next trailer comes in that Switch 2 reveal, or showcase, or whatever we think it's going to be. And maybe that is when you get confirmation, like we're traveling to different dimensions, or we're traveling to different points in time, or whatever. Like, I guess like, I guess now that I'm saying it, actually, the game that I think of the most when I think of that Switch presentation, and I think you guys would probably agree, is probably Breath of the Wild, which ironically, came out for Wii U. So I think that Metroid Prime 4 can still basically massage all of the critiques that I had and make them basically non-factors, or even more non-factors than they are already. Like I said, I was kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit, but yeah, I mean, really all it takes is like one awesome trailer. And I think that they could definitely deliver on that, and I hope that they do with the Switch 2 reveal. You know, one thing I would say, man, I really, really, really hope that this game launches at the same time on both. I would be bummed if this launched on the Switch and then we had to wait like 6 months to play it on the Switch too. I would be disappointed.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Agreed.
No, I think that's what's going to happen 100%. I think it's going to come
I
out on
hope
the
not.
Switch 1. Is that really a big concern to you?
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference? I feel like
yes.
Yeah, it's a huge
on the
concern.
Switch 1. Why?
I want to play the best version of this game on day one. I don't want to, even if the Switch, and again, the Switch 1, regardless which platform it comes out on, it's going to look amazing. We've seen the Switch 1 version in action. It looks gorgeous. So but I want to play the best version on day one.
But when
hold on.
this
too.
Switch, it'll
this
be
too.
the best version that's available.
Yeah, but okay, so imagine this. I also want this game to succeed, right? And like, if the game is coming out on the Nintendo Switch and we know in 6 months it's coming out on the Switch too, why am I buying it for the Switch? So people aren't going to buy it there, and then maybe they're going to wait for it on the Switch too, and maybe their situation changes. They just never get around to buying it. Like, that's, I think, a big concern as well.
Or they buy it on the Switch 1 and then they never buy it for the Switch 2 because they already own it.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe, I mean, even that in and of itself, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. But like, I think that if you give people the option to buy it right away on whatever platform they want, that's so much better than just saying, here's the inferior Switch version. In 6 months, we have the upgraded version coming out.
I don't think it's going to come out 6 months later either.
Well, I hope not.
No, but I'm saying, like, I don't like, let's say the Switch 2 does come out 6 months later. I think they would hold Metroid Prime 4 for the Switch 2 until maybe longer because it just came out 6 months prior on the Switch. So I don't think that situation would ever happen.
Well, and I think that would suck. I think that would be terrible.
Maybe, I don't know. I think it'd be fine.
I'm not going to argue what other people are going to think. I'm not going to pretend that I can predict the future if that were to come to light. I'm just talking about my own personal feelings. I would be very disappointed if we knew there was going to be a Switch 2 version and it did not release day and date with the Switch.
Yeah.
That would greatly disappoint me personally as a fan.
I would be very disappointed too if it came out for the Switch and there was no Switch 2 mention. Even if eventually in like a year or two it got ported to the Switch 2, I would be so disappointed, man. I'd be so disappointed.
I'm like, oh man, Metroid Prime 4 is for the Switch. Dang it. I can play it right now. That's all so awful. Like, I just don't see where the problem is.
We just told you what the problem was though. That's
that's a self-made problem. You're choosing to wait where you could just play it on the perfectly fine version that it's being made for.
I didn't say I was going to wait. I said I'm going to buy it, but I want the best version. So like, one, I would be disappointed. Well, yeah, but your average fan isn't a freak like us that buys 6 copies of Metroid Dread. You know what I mean?
Fine buying it on the Switch, and so they won't have this dilemma.
But you're ignoring what we're saying. There's lots of reasons why we are not wanting that to happen, and I think a lot of that is very valid. Now, if you want to, if it comes out on the Switch, of course I'm going to buy it, of course. But like, I want it on the Switch too, and I want the game to succeed, and I want the best version of the game.
I guess, but every version of the game would be the best version on the most recent console, right? I could be like, I want Mario Kart 64 for the Switch 2, but it's already out. I might as well buy it.
Well, that's why I'm specifically making the caveat. If we know about a Switch 2 version, if Nintendo does not announce a Switch 2 version, and this is the only version we know we're getting, okay, I'll still be a little disappointed that we're not getting a Switch 2 version, but fine, whatever. I'm saying if there is a Switch 2 version announced, and it does not come out day and date with the Switch 1 version, that will disappoint me. Because here's the thing, for me personally, I can only play a game for the first time once. After that, it's the second time, or the third time, or the 100th time. It's very true. And I want the first time that I play this experience that I have been waiting, nearly 20 years for, I want it to be the best possible version of that experience on my first time, because I only get that opportunity once.
I hear you. No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I just think this hypothetical is self-imposed. I don't think is ever going to happen, realistically. But yes, I guess if the game was announced for the Switch 1 and for some reason Nintendo's like you can play this in 6 months for the Switch 2, I guess that sucks, but then okay, you wait 6 months.
And see, and that sucks. But I agree. I don't think that.
Guess, but Andy, I feel like you said earlier this episode we just waited for 20 years. What's 6 more months? Didn't you just say that?
I did, but if like it's a big difference between the game's not available and the game is available, but wait 6 months. Like I'm not sure you're hearing what we're saying.
I guess that's fair, but I don't know.
Well, here's the other thing.
And I still got to worry about. I would have to worry about spoilers at that point if I'm going to do that waiting as well. It's like, especially being on a Metroid podcast. Like, of course, like I'd have to.
There's no way that we could wait. And here's the thing. You're right.
I just don't think that you'd be waiting. Hold on. Requires the wait.
Here's the thing. That would never happen.
A billion times better on the Switch 2. That's my point. It's not. Okay. You're not going to be waiting for a substantial. Improvement.
So the thing is this: if they release a Switch 2 version, I cannot see any scenario where it does not and they announced it beforehand. I cannot see any scenario where there's a delay. I think it releases day and day on Switch 2 and Switch 1. So in that scenario, yeah, that would stink, but I don't think Nintendo would ever release the Switch 2 version later. Now, would I also be disappointed if it just released on Switch 1? And like, let's just say hypothetically in 2 years it came to Switch 2. Yeah, I think that kind of sucks as well, because again, like I'm sure the game is going to be great over on the Switch, but just again, with what we said about how we want the game to succeed, I'm just not convinced that it would do as well on the base Switch as it would on the Switch 2. Like I would bet you, I don't know, a New York deli sandwich, Dak, that if this game released on the Switch and on the Switch 2 at the exact same time, even if the Switch 2 has 150 million units out there, I'd bet you anything that the Switch 2 version sells more. I really would.
I don't agree with that. And
historical data backs me up. So
I guess we'll find out then.
Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't know.
Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Yeah. But
if I lose, I have to go to New York. So I mean, that's terrible. I would hate to go there again. Yeah, we're looking for any reason to go back, actually. But
it would be great to have you.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my only real, because I think we can beat that horse dead as long as we want here. I didn't have any other critiques of the trailer. My Space Pirate one and the gameplay one was my real biggest ones. I think the only other comments I had were I had one thing. I'm not sure if I want to save it maybe to the end, so I want to give the next one real quick. I don't know how many more comments y'all have.
I actually don't really have anything, so the floor is yours.
I was gonna say I'm pretty reserved now that I think we're getting beam stacking, and we're not getting switchable beams. I'm just re-looking at the heads-up display. It looks so much like the Prime 3 heads-up display when going back and looking at it. It looks like very much to me that what we're gonna have is we're gonna have your beam, and that's gonna be your beam, and it's in a stack. Your visors are gonna be set to a button, and it'll bring up like a wheel or menu like Prime 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then that left side dial where the D-pad thing, that's going to be the missiles, and then 3 other arm cannon based gadget tree, whatever, which aren't going to be beams. They might be missile combos. They could be whatever, right? That's what I think is end up happening. I don't think we're going to have beam switching. I think that's going to stay like you're just going to have your set beam. You'll switch with visors through a button. You use the grapple beam through a button, and you'll use that like selector on the bottom left to choose between non-beam arsenal, which might be, the shock coil, which I guess is technically a beam, but maybe it'll be counted as something different. The missiles, maybe missile combo, stuff like that. That's what I think after rewatching this trailer again, much I love beam swapping, I think we're going to get more of the weapon swapping from that kind of angle of like between non-beam weapons and beam weapons versus swapping between individual beams. Hate to say it, but I think that's what we're getting.
Really convinced on that yet, just because again, this is clearly like, if not the opening, like very near the opening of the game where, we're still at our base abilities. I think we haven't even seen like a fraction of like the new tech that we're going to collect on this adventure.
I agree with that. I think it's going to fit onto that D-pad selector that I'm mentioning, because I'm just looking at the heads-up display. There's no room for beam switching. It looks like, unless they put it to a wheel or another button. I don't know.
I think I could see it going to a wheel. That's what I think. I wonder too, though, like, I also wonder if like you're gonna get like one main beam, and we kind of talked about this. Maybe you have like a wheel of like sub options that changes that beam and changes
Yeah.
the properties.
Maybe that's-
Which I mean, I guess at that point is pretty much the same thing as just having a beam on a wheel. But
Yeah.
I could see that going either way, like either stacking or having the wheel. And I actually think I'm okay with either. To be honest with you, it's kind of like
I've always been okay with this as long as you're swapping between just weapons in general. Your
Yeah.
arsenal is diverse. Doesn't necessarily have to be all different beams. It could be all different kinds of weapons. So.
I've talked about it in the Discord, but my ideal is both, where you do have swappable beams, but each individual beams has their own like exclusive like stacks that you can do, their own little stackable upgrades that gives each one that enhances each one's unique properties that much. That I think would be like really cool. You get the best of both worlds. You still get, you know, kind of that puzzle dynamic that the beam swapping allows in Prime 1 and especially Prime 2. But then you also get kind of that traditional classic, you know, permanent upgrade stature where, you know, you're constantly just making yourself more powerful.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Doom, you got any other critiques there, or do you want to throw over to Dak's last one?
Not really. I just had a really minor nitpick, one that I mentioned in the Discord server, and it's like literally. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not even gonna talk about that.
Oh, come on! You can't tease us like that.
No, you can't do
Well,
that.
no, because I thought of an even bigger one, something that actually.
All right,
I don't know.
Gears. What is it?
What really grinds my gears? The charge beam looks lame as hell. I'm sorry. I do not like the look.
It
of
does
the charge
look a
beam.
little bit small, doesn't
It's
it?
Yeah, I have heard some people theorize. I've heard some people theorize that perhaps this is an upgradable charge beam, and that this is just what the base one looks like, and perhaps, you know, as you progress through the game, it can be upgraded more and look like that more traditional, you know, big ball of energy, power of the sun, the palm of my hands looking kind of deal. If that's the case, okay, I'm down. But if that little pea shooter, if I'm gonna be stuck with that the whole game, don't get me wrong. It's just a little visual flare. It's not the end of the world, but I'm not gonna lie. I think it's the worst looking charge beam of the entire series. I don't like it.
I noticed that the first time I watched the trailer too. To be totally honest, I was like, that's a wee little charge beam that Samus has got.
You know what? I'm not going to die on this hill because I love me a big ball of energy charge beam, but I kind of like it. It reminds me. It has like the density of like like a dwarf star, you know, like just when those like compact things, like that's the feeling I got from it. Like it's so compact, it's dense, and that's like, and it has like the little bit of blue flare on like fringe on the outside of it as it's fully charged. I don't know. It looked kind of very potent to me. It looked like very like
Okay.
almost more concentrated than a normal charge beam. So I don't know. I kind of liked it, but I totally hear and see what you're saying. I didn't dislike it though. I kind of like it.
Well,
Still think to this day, and I talked about this earlier, I still think Prime 3 has by far the best looking charge beam of the whole series. Even Prime Remastered does not touch the Prime 3 charge beam, in my opinion. I remember seeing the first gameplay of Prime 3 when they first revealed it at E3. Not the original reveal trailer, but like the following year once, the Wiimote and Nunchuck were a thing. And, at first glance you look at Prime 3 and it's like, oh, it kind of looks the same as Prime 1 and 2. And then they show off that charge beam and there's all these new translucent, moving textures, and you have all these wild particle effects swirling around the beam, and it's like, oh my gosh, this looks insane. I've never seen this before. And now these new ones are just kind of more reserved, and I'm like, no, man, it's the charge beam. That's the Kamehameha, that's the Hadoken. That's the big one. And I don't know. I prefer, personally, that look of the charge beam.
as my father used to always tell me, Doom, it's not the size of your charge beam that counts. It's how you use it, by God. So let's give Samus a break there.
I don't believe your father said that.
Dak, what is the final critique that you had?
So, yeah, this actually isn't a critique. This is just something I noticed in maybe I'm just bugging. Something I noticed in the trailer when I rewatched it, and I would love for everybody to maybe, I don't know what this means, and maybe it was just like some kind of audio error. And now that I think about it more, maybe it was. But when I first rewatched the trailer today, the first 13 seconds of the trailer, when you listen to it, when like it's just a black screen and there's text coming up,
Yeah.
when you listen to it, in the background there's like a storm or like thunder happening. I didn't notice this until I rewatched and listened to the trailer again, but if you really listen, the background like ambient noise is like it sounds like Talon Overworld almost. It's like a rainstorm and thunder, but when it cuts to the visual, it's Samus's ship landing, and there's like almost no atmosphere, and like there's no rain, there's no storm, there's no weather.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
No,
there's
there's
rain in the tree. You can see it dripping on Samus's arm cannon. It's raining during
When
during
she
that
lands
scene.
on the in the beginning of the trailer, it's raining.
Yeah.
Is it? No, it's not.
Yeah.
Hold on. I need to rewind to confirm that, but I think Doom is right.
Is it? Well, hold on. Let me. Okay, because she gets out of her ship. I don't see any rain.
One second. We're doing instant video review here, so
Nah, there's no rain. What are you talking
Look
about?
look at the arm cannon when she's outside during the gameplay. Like you can see like rain like, falling onto the arm cannon.
Can you?
Yeah.
Hold
yeah.
on.
Okay, so it's a split-second shot,
oh,
Dak.
oh.
It's at about 22 seconds, but on the right side of Samus's ship, you can see
Yep, I
clearly
see a
rain coming down.
Yep. Okay. Well, my critique was me being dumb. I thought maybe I had come across some cool little hint at something, or it's barely raining on this planet. But yeah, I guess you're right. It is raining. All right, false alarm. I don't have
Maybe
anything else to say about
maybe
this
the
trailer.
atmosphere is just a little. It's got some light
No, you're
kind
right.
of rain
'Cause
going
then
on.
No, because you're right. I guess you're right. I look in. If you watch the rest of the trailer here, the skies are kind of cloudy-ish. So, you know
Well.
what? That's all I got. I didn't have anything else. I just heard that. I was like, oh, is it really? Because when I was rewatching the trailer, I was like, it rains in this trailer? And then I listened to it. I was like, wait, it's raining? And then I guess it is raining. I guess I need to get my eyes checked. Andy needs to get his ears checked. I need to get my eyes checked.
What's
clearly.
wrong with you, Doom? What do you need to get?
Yeah.
I need to enjoy Hollow Knight. That's my problem.
Well, I can't help you there, brother.
I wrote this whole note down. I was like, oh, I found something cool in the trailer. It's nothing.
Yeah, well,
I guess since we got through that quickly, I'll just do my last super minor nitpick that I hinted at earlier. And again, significantly less of a deal than the charge beam, but upon rewatching the trailer in slow motion, and I talked about this on the Discord, I noticed that the recoil animation was completely wrong. Where instead of getting her arm cannon pulled back like it should be if you're firing a weapon, she's actually poking her arm cannon a little bit like
She's
in
like
front
squeezing
every
them out.
yeah, and like it's one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. But also like when it's happening in real time and you're rapidly firing shots, you can't even notice it. I do think it's a little weird. I hope they change it, but if they don't, whatever. It's just weird.
I feel like such an idiot. If you watch this trailer, you can clearly see that it's raining. What is wrong? I guess I was just so focused on what was going on in the trailer, I didn't notice. But yeah, you can see the droplets and whatnot. I'm sorry, Doom. I was just rewatching the trailer again.
to be fair, the rain doesn't come. It's not like Talon Overworld where it's raining.
No, but
like
you can see it on her visor now. You can see the droplets on her arm cannon, which has the
yeah.
weird arm. Okay, so fine. Crucify me, whatever. I wasn't paying attention. I'm dumb. But
Fake.
No,
fan.
you're not. Don't
That's
say
fine.
that.
But Doom,
Don't
no,
say
this is
that.
actually it does look kind of weird. I kind of like the squeeziness, like it's squeezing them out, but yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
And even the recoil rings, they operate differently because typically they retract in a way that makes it look like they're absorbing the recoil. But in this one, much like the animation, it pops out with each shot this time. But again, it's a whatever thing. It's a minor detail, and if it doesn't get fixed, whatever.
Sometimes I feel just like a dumb Metroid fan because like I feel like sometimes you guys notice all this stuff and I'm just like, game look good, yes.
Well,
You know what I mean? Like Doom's over here with his music analysis and tech analysis, and Dak, you've looked at a few different things in the trailer too, and I'm like, I don't know, I think it sounds good, looks good, whatever. Like, let's go.
Well, like I said, I didn't have a lot to say about. I thought the trailer was great. It's just it's like you said, it's when you wait for something for so long and then you finally actually see it. It's never going to meet up and match your expectations, but you hope it does to the best of its ability and yours.
Yeah.
And I would say I was almost entirely very satisfied with what we got. Obviously, we're sitting here nitpicking the trailer, and it's not going to be perfect. And and then claiming things about it that didn't even happen, which we're gonna which I took back, but whatever. Yeah, I think that's just a testament to there was a very strong trailer and there was a lot of
Yeah.
talk about it and buzz about it, which was great because there have been duds of reveals for Metroid in the past that have not gone over as well. So it was great to have that, and I'm glad that
Yeah.
overall I'm still excited for the game, obviously, but even going back to this trailer, that I was even excited to look at even more details and maybe find something hidden in there that maybe I'm seeing something, you're hearing something that might not be there, but it's still fun.
I would say too. Sorry, Doom. Just really quickly. I was kind of complaining about, when would I have shown this? How would I have shown this? I think that falls into the exact same thing too, where like you have an idea in your mind for so long about the right way to do it that you're still kind of coming to grips. So it's not just literally what you see in the trailer; it's all that other stuff too, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of the last thing I'd say. Is anyone who is watching this tonight and being like, "Oh my God, really? That's your critiques? It's the low bar stuff." To which I say, yes, because that's how excited we are for this game. That we literally had to scrape the bottom of the barrel to find. I don't even know if issues is the right word with the trailer, but just stuff that stood out to us, I guess. That that definitely rang our alarm bell. Not even alarm bells, but yeah, just stuff that we noticed, basically. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, yeah, I might not like the look of the new charge beam. I'm still hyped as hell for this game. I'm gonna play it day one, and I'm super excited. I definitely can speak for you guys on that one too.
Yeah, absolutely. And no matter if it's coming out on Switch 1, 2, 3, whatever, 3DS, who cares? I'm gonna be playing this game day one. I'm gonna be loving it, no matter which version it is. So, yeah, but this was fun, kind of to get some of that just off of our chest, and some of it, as soon as you say it, is just like, man, now that I've said it, this really, who cares? And some of the other stuff too, maybe we'll come back and see. Maybe I do have to go back to New York and buy Dak a sandwich. We'll see what that's gonna look like in the next couple years, but we won't have to wait too long, which is the good news here. I'm sure we got some more details coming about this game in early of next year, if not maybe later in 2024, when presumably the Switch 2 is revealed. I don't know. I think that's still going to happen, but we'll see. Anything anyone wants to say in closing before we get on out of here?
I was gonna say, I feel like now we're about to go into the next big drought. Well, not big. Like, oh, now when's the next Metroid Prime 4 info? But it's like, oh, well, that's kind of nice that it's not a crazy drought. We know we're gonna get that info soon. It's just, damn, it's been a month. I want more. Where are my Prime 4 reports? Where are my monthly reports? Where's my... I remember growing up with, if anyone remembers this, the Smash Brawl dojo.
Oh, every day.
Every day. And
big updates, too. I remember one time they just randomly dropped Sonic, and I was like,
yeah,
what?
Well, I remember staying up very often because, even some of these updates were coming in the summer.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't post till like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I would be like on my laptop, refreshing before I go to bed. And then it would be like, the banana peel is coming to Brawl. Get out of here,
damn
man.
It! I remember actually when they first posted the Ridley theme, and I think that was one of the very first things they ever posted. And I was like, "Damn, this sounds sick!"
That was the 6th or 7th post I want to say, and I was like, "Wow, this is gonna be great when they put him in the game, huh?" I remember when Bowser was revealed on that Smash Dojo. I still remember the night and where I was, on my friend's couch at 2:30 in the morning, refreshing, and I saw Bowser. I was like, "Oh, Bowser looks sick." And that's how I knew that Brawl's... not that I knew. I was like, oh, Brawl's got these serious graphics. Bowser's looking serious in this game. I still... No game has the same kind of build.
No game does, no. I took the week that it was coming out off, and then the game got delayed, and I was like, and I had to adjust my holidays so that I could take the week off that it actually came out. And yeah, I was with you, man. I would love that site.
Yeah, that was such a good time.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that is going to do it for us for today. So this was fun, and you know what? We got a cool episode coming next week. Lots and lots of people texted me after that Metroid Prime 4 trailer. Lots of my non-Metroid fans and they're like, who's that dude at the end? What's his deal? What's he all about? So next week, we're diving deep into Silex, who he is, where he comes from, maybe some of our theories about what could be going on with this character. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And you know what? Hey, let's throw it out there to everybody listening too. If you got any theories or whatnot about maybe who you think Silex is, what his relationship to the Galactic Federation or Samus or lack thereof is, let us know. Discord over on Twitter, and maybe if we get some cool ones, we'll even read them off on the show. We'll see how that goes, but that's coming next week. So make sure that you're tuning in. Until then, everybody, we of course want you to check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Go like, subscribe, recommend, rate, review, all that kind of good stuff. Hey, if you got a Metroid fan in your life excited for Beyond, tell them about the Omega Metroid podcast. We're doing it weekly. And we also have a dedicated website as well, omegametroid.com, which also has, in addition to every single episode we've ever done, stuff like our YouTube channels over there. Our theme song is available for free download. We got guides, we got walkthroughs, we got thought pieces, lots of cool stuff there. If you're a Metroid fan, give us a follow over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at Daxity_, at Duminal Cross. And that, my friends, is going to do it for us. So until next week, everybody, take care.